All right, good afternoon. I understand we're competing with quite a few other sound stages this morning. I do have quite a lot of humanitarian updates for you. You will have all seen that today Secretary General spoke in the General Assembly and said we're facing the biggest global peace and security crisis in recent years, certainly in his time as Secretary General. He told the General Assembly members that the decision by the Russian Federation to recognize the so-called independence of certain areas of Donetsk and Luhansk regions and the follow-up are violations of territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and inconsistent with the principles of the Charter. He also added that the Minsk agreements were surviving in an intensive care unit thanks to a number of life support devices, but those devices have now been disconnected. He added that this is time for restraint, reason, and de-escalation. There is no place for action and statements that would take this dangerous situation over the abyss. It is high time, he said, to establish a ceasefire and return to the path of dialogue, negotiations to save the people of Ukraine and beyond from the scourge of war. Do you work in television? Just checking. It's okay. That's all right. I mean, Benno brought his snack. You know, you walk in front of the camera. Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. It's all right. On the humanitarian front, on Ukraine, our colleagues in that country continue to receive reports of hostilities impacting civilians and their properties, as well as infrastructure on both sides of the contact line. Once again, we call on all parties to take all measures to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. Despite the volatile security situation, we, along with our humanitarian partners in eastern Ukraine, are making all efforts to respond to the needs of people on both sides of that line. Response efforts are, however, constrained due to limited funding. As of today, the existing humanitarian response plan for 2022 has been funded by less than 10%. We are calling on donors to prioritize their support to this plan, which seeks $190 million to address the needs of 1.8 million of the most vulnerable people on both sides of the contact line. You will have seen that earlier today we issued a statement in which the Secretary General strongly condemned the arrest of 4 members of the UN peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic. As we told you yesterday, they were arrested at Bangui Airport on Monday while escorting a senior UN military officer of the mission. The Secretary General emphasizes that pursuant to the 2014 Status of Forces Agreement between the UN and the government of the Central African Republic, these members of the UN mission enjoy privileges and immunities which are held in the interest of the organization. He recalls that the 2014 Status of Forces Agreement establishes a specific procedure in cases where members of the mission are suspected by the authorities of the Central African Republic of having committed an offense. He also notes that this procedure has not been followed in this present case. Secretary General calls upon the government of the Central African Republic to abide by all of its obligations under international law, including the Status of Forces Agreement, and release our 4 colleagues unconditionally and without delay. The Secretary General reaffirms the solidarity and continued support of the United Nations to the people of the Central African Republic. Back here in the Security Council, Tor Venislan, the UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, briefed the Security Council members on the Israeli-Palestine situation today. He warned that across the West Bank, daily violence continues, tensions in East Jerusalem and the refugee camps are mounting, and settler violence remains a serious concern. He also said that illegal settlements and planning processes are steadily advancing alongside demolitions and evictions, including in and around East Jerusalem. Mr. Venisland added that in Gaza, a fragile calm currently prevails, but that absent fundamental changes, this is only temporary. In a tweet, Mr. Venisland said that today, Mr. Venisland said today he was gravely concerned by yesterday's killing of a 14-year-old boy, Mohammed Shahadadeh, by the Israeli security forces in Bethlehem. He offered his deepest condolences to the family and said the Israeli security forces must exercise maximum restraint and may use lethal force only when strictly unavoidable to protect human life. Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the head of the Peacekeeping Department, as you know, is continuing his trip in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where he's representing the Secretary General. This morning, he traveled to the capital Kinshasa and met with President Tshisekedi, as well as Prime Minister Salma Lukonde. Mr. Lacroix had also met with representatives of political parties and civil society. Discussions today focused on the political and security situation in the country, including the ongoing activities of armed groups in the country's east and their impact on the population living in the impacted provinces. Mr. Lacroix reiterated our commitment to work with Congolese authorities and relevant stakeholders towards peace and security in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. A few humanitarian updates. First one on Madagascar, where tropical cyclone Imnati made landfall overnight in the village of Mangatsiatra, in an area already impacted by tropical cyclone Batissarai. Our colleagues say that this is the fifth extreme weather event to impact Madagascar this year, and we're still only in February. Over 44,000 people have been evacuated to 130 shelter sites ahead of the cyclone, according to the authorities. Stocks of food and non-food items were also pre-positioned by the government and as well as our UN humanitarian partners in Manjari and Manakara to enable immediate response to affected areas. The World Food Programme, together with authorities, is planning the distribution of food in sites for displaced people. Partners are already visiting impacted areas to identify the community's most immediate needs. Aerial assessment by the government and the UN and our own humanitarian partners are expected to begin tomorrow. In the meantime, the now weakened weather system is still bringing heavy rain and strong winds to the southeast of Madagascar, including in the Grand Sud region, which has been suffering an extremely severe drought. Given how dry the land is these areas, we have great concerns about the risk of flash floods with new rains coming in. Turning to Afghanistan, a delegation of senior UN and NGO representatives who are part of the emergency directors group of the Interagency Standing Committee is currently in the country on a 5-day mission. They will see firsthand the humanitarian situation on the ground, as well as the ongoing aid response to the dire situation in the country. The team is meeting with frontline aid workers, healthcare professionals, and humanitarian coordination teams in Kabul and at the humanitarian projects in Kandahar, Panjwai, and Spinboldak. We're also meeting with women and men directly impacted by decades of conflict and displacement, climate events, including recurrent droughts, and the severe economic decline in Afghanistan since August of this year. The Syria Humanitarian Needs Overview for 2022 has now been published and says that this year, some 14.6 million people, that's 9% more than last year, are in need of humanitarian assistance in the country. Overall, people's ability to meet basic needs is decreasing, with a disproportionate impact on female-headed households, older persons without family support, persons with disabilities, and children. More households are turning to negative ways of coping, including child labor, child marriage, the sale of productive assets. We continue to provide life-saving aid, but also emphasize the need for resilience and recovery assistance. And in Brazil, our team there, led by the UN's resident coordinator, Sylvia Rux, launched a partnership with the Interstate Consortium that includes all 9 states of the Amazon to support the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. This initiative includes the creation of an SDG monitoring mechanism and development proposals to raise funds and finance sustainable development activities. Currently, there are 16 entities working within the Amazonian states with a new partnership that will integrate their line of action. By working with all Amazonian states, we will reach 30 million people that live in an area to boost our capacity to contribute to the work of curbing deforestation while promoting human and economic development. And in Colombia, not too far away, we, along with our partners, today launched the 2022 Humanitarian Response Plan, aiming to help 1.6 million vulnerable people at a cost of about $283 million US. The plan focuses on health, malnutrition, food insecurity, and ensuring the protection of the most vulnerable, particularly indigenous communities. The plan also contributes to addressing violence against civilians, particularly women and children, the movements of migrants and refugees, and climate. Our friends here at the Department of Economic and Social Affairs today released a new report which analyzes how rapid population growth adds to the challenges of achieving sustainable economic and social development. Our projections suggest that global population could grow to a peak of almost 11 billion people by the end of this century. The report also highlights the rise in per capita income has been more important than population growth in driving increased production and consumption and emission of greenhouse gases. The report is the first in a series of major demographic trends to provide reliable data, accessible information, analysis of population patterns and trends to help guide policymaking. That information is available on the web. And the UN Human Rights Office today released a report which calls on development finance institutions to adopt a proactive approach to human rights violations. The report notes that initiatives supported by these institutions often lead to adverse social and environmental impact on individuals and communities. That report is online. Another report, this one by the UN Environment Programme and the NGO Grid Arundel, warns that climate change and land use change are projected to make wildfires more frequent and intense. The report projects that there will be global increase of extreme fires up from 14% by 2030, 30% by the end of 2050, and 50% by the end of the century. UNEP calls for radical change in government spending on wildfires, shifting their investments from reaction and response to prevention and preparedness. The report also calls for the combination of data and scientific-based monitoring system with indigenous knowledge and for strong regional and international cooperation. The report was released ahead of the resumed fifth session of the UN Environment Assembly, which gets underway starting the 28th of February in Nairobi. I want to end on a positive note. We now have 61 member states fully paid up. Our friends in Mali paid their dues in full. Mali is the capital of which country? Mali. No, okay, Maldives. You cannot Google on Jeopardy. Benno, go ahead.
Thank you. After the Secretary General accused Russia of violating the UN Charter, Russia does the same now with the SG, saying that he made several statements incompatible with his status and his authority under the UN Charter. What's your comment on that?
Look, the Secretary General's words, I think, were very clear. He repeated that he spoke to you yesterday. He spoke again today. I'm not going to enter into polemics. I will let all of you do the compare and contrast.
Still, follow up. Does the SG think that he acted in his authority?
He would not have said what he said if he did not think he was acting within his role as Secretary General. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Steph. After the Secretary General made his comments on Ukraine, did he hear from Moscow any sort of reaction? Did the foreign minister call him on the phone?
Well, I mean, he heard what the permanent representative, Mr. Nebenzia, said at the General Assembly. He was standing right behind him, so he heard him. And there'd also been contacts between the Secretary General and Mr. Nebenzia yesterday.
Do you have a readout of those contacts?
Again, I will let you do the compare and contrast. Madame.
Just a quick follow-up on that. So does the Secretary General think that the Security Council is doing actually a job besides meeting? Does he believe that the Security Council should do more on this issue?
I will give you my standard answer is that we firmly believe that the Security Council has an important play in the prevention of conflict, in ensuring peace and security, and we think when the Council speaks with one voice, they are stronger.
On a different topic, do you have any updates on the humanitarian situation on Yemen? And is it also possible to get somebody from the ground in Yemen to talk to us about the humanitarian situation there? Thank you.
We will ask if Mr. Gressly can join you, and I'll try to get, if he can't, he probably won't be able to join us in the next 24, 48 hours, but I'll try to get an update for you from Yemen. And from what I know, the update is not positive. Let me go to the screen first, and I'll come back to you. Nikos.
Hello, Stephane. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. My question, 2 days ago, the Secretary General called out Russian President Putin's decision to recognize certain areas of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of Ukraine as independent. As evaluation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. May I ask why the Secretary General never issued a similar statement regarding Turkey's violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Cyprus? For example, a while ago, you talked about Ukraine and you said the word dangerous. And you're correct. Is this danger only for other countries, not Cyprus? Is this a fair treatment under the UN principles? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Nikos. One, I would encourage you to do some research. We can, you're free to look at, to see what the Secretary General at the time in the early mid-70s said about what was going on in Cyprus. Currently, the Cyprus situation is one for which the Secretary General, I think, has put out a lot of effort, a lot of political capital in order to help the parties resolve the problems on the ground. And whether it's through his good officers, whether it's the mission, we continue to work in that way.
Thank you, Stephane. I will not stop doing research. Just to remind you, I'm a refugee as of 1974. So further to my research, I never forget. Thank you.
Okay. Amanda.
Thanks, Steph. Do you have any updates on staffing levels, UN staffing levels in eastern Ukraine? You said that additional staff were going in, some dependents were going out.
Yeah, they're fluctuating. As I mentioned, we are in the process of removing some staff that does not have what essential functions that can be done, basically done from other places, moving out some dependents. On the other hand, some more staff are coming in to support on the humanitarian, on the operational basis. I'll try to get you some more fixed numbers soon. Okay, Paulina, I think it is you, unless somebody else opens a mic, which they will not. Okay.
I have a question, Stephane, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Oscar.
Yes, thank you, Stephane. Stephane, what is the humanitarian crisis situation now when the Prime Minister asked his citizens to leave and not to travel and to leave the country immediately? And in the region,
sorry, Oscar.
Region of Ukraine,
Oscar, what situation you're referring to? I didn't.
Ukraine.
Oh, Ukraine. You know, the humanitarian situation for the people living on both sides of the line of contact is fairly dire. We're very concerned that there continues to be shelling or firing across the line. We are seeking further funds to assist about 1.8 million people. We had a convoy last go in, I think, on Thursday or Friday last week. We're continuing to operate. We're continuing to be present in eastern Ukraine on both sides of the line of contact, and we will continue to do so. But obviously, the more there is continued exchange of fire, the more it is difficult and challenging it is for the civilian population, which has already been suffering for quite a number of years. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Paulina, please. Thank you.